Hello and welcome to Season of War. Hope everybody is having a good night. My name's Jordan. I'm joined by Ridge and Fabian tonight. It's been
What
so
up,
long
y'all?
since I've seen you guys.
Yeah, long time no see.
Hilarious.
Yeah. We're maybe not obviously, but we are all fresh off of returning to our various homes from AoS North American Masters Team Championship. It's a mouthful. But we are competing on two different teams because our dear Fabian is in another region. Obviously, doesn't live close to us, but we are all competing on Masters teams for the team championship regional title.
Yeah.
We still need to figure out what the real name is.
Yeah, I think also like it's worth giving it a quick explanation in case you haven't seen the previous videos or you've only seen some of them or whatnot. But the event we all attended together this past weekend again is the it's called AoS Masters, but it's basically the North American AoS Team Championship. You can throw Masters in there. Any combination of those words or titles explains it pretty decently. But yes, the general consensus or the general synopsis is it's a team event. So obviously the team championship part and the AoS Masters part, obviously AoS players. But with that, Masters being a lot of the top players from across. Yeah.
It's an invitational. That's
Yes.
where like the Masters come from, kind of like what you have in tennis. It's an invitational event, and you have like the best regions for the best players for each region, based on availability and of course like things like that. But yeah, it's not an open, like not anyone can go. You have a captain for each of the region. They make their team and they go and play together, a bit like Worlds, but for North America. So that would be our equivalent here, or maybe more like Six Nations. But
Yeah.
North American equivalent to that.
I just like that it's when it's like AoS Masters, I get calling it that, but I think North America Masters is just the best way to say it because it is the Masters of all of Canada and USA and just the best regions. So yeah.
Yep.
And for this year, there was 8 teams. Might change next year, but each of them named after a realm. And we had Akshi was the South with Texas and adjacent states. Gur was a Southwest with California and same thing other states. Shaman was Pacific Northwest with the states in the US as well as BC in Canada. Shaish is kind of like the Midwest and the Great Plains in the US. Ulgu, Southeast with Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Hish was my team with North Carolina, and then everything above with DC, Virginia, Maryland. Gairan is all the northeast of the US, from basically New Jersey all the way to the Canadian border, including Boston, where the event took place. And then the last one is Azir, which is all of Canada minus BC, and that's Jordan's and Rich team.
Yeah.
Yes,
no
sir.
one will remember the realm, but you will remember the area.
Yeah. That's...
especially if in the future they add more teams, they will have to remove using the realms. It was just like it was a cute thing for this year.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys. I didn't send it off, but there was feedback requested for the event, and that was actually like the one, like they asked for negative feedback, and that was like the one day, not negative, but like one change is I would rather just it be region, like the regional team names that we used. Those were the main ones we used throughout the event, right? We never actually referred to each other as Team Zero or anything, but like
you're not the only one. That was easily in some other. I agree with that as well.
Yeah, it's like again, more pride also in being like, oh, we're the Pacific . team, or we're the
And it's limiting for the number of teams as well for the future. So
yeah. But obviously that's
what do you call Canada?
I would say this
Just
is
Canada?
no, because we don't have BC, so it'd be like Central and Eastern Canada.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Because I think
I mean, we have a bit
guess
bit of the
quick-
West too,
quick
but
parenthesis on the feedback of the event. Outside of people being there, we've seen in the Discord of the event that there are some regions that would have liked to be there and were not represented due to how the regions were cut. So there will be some discussion for next year to change that and
It's
make
the
sure
first
that
year
yeah, exactly.
that it's
But make sure
came,
that
so-
every meta and region feels represented and not left out.
Yeah. Yep.
and
Yeah, it's not easy again, as you just said. It was the first year. The TOs as well as the other people involved in the organization put a lot of time and effort.
Oh yeah,
and,
huge props to the Wicked
like-
Dicey guys and obviously Rob and everyone. It was absolutely
and,
immaculately
Tomo as
ran.
well.
Tomo, yeah.
yep.
Yeah, for helping in the background. But yeah,
Yep.
it was great.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say something, but then I forgot. Great
Oops,
job.
sorry.
It's okay. Do you want to say hey to everyone in the chat and thanks for joining? A special shout out to Devin, our teammate, who's hanging out in there as well. But everyone that's joining tonight, again, this is as often with our streams. We're going to be kind of discussing things in a pretty loose nature. So if there's ever any questions, but actually the thing I was going to say is, again, on the back of it being a first year event, is if you do want to get involved, you know, there it feels like teams are going to. A lot of teams are trying to put, pending any changes to the regional territories, are hopefully using different things to help select teams or different things, because it's obviously meant to be it's an achievement based event. Obviously if you're recognized as a top player, but you don't want it. I guess, yeah, I think a lot of the teams are trying to make sure it's a equal opportunity kind of thing.
I could speak a little bit to that just for our process too. So it's a lot of the regions like the PNW and like the Southwest, they have their own Masters circuit. So if you do well in tournaments in that area, you do better in that placings, and then they take the top 8 players from that. So we don't have one in Canada. So I think I mentioned when Miles was on, very similarly, I just kind of looked at being the captain this year. I won't be next year, but I just kind of looked at the top players in Canada through ITC. So that's just because that's the only thing we have. And then I went on the list and then took players from that. And then as well, on top of that, when we had a few drops from Quebec, that's where I had a couple different players. But it's hard because some of the tournaments with Quebec, they don't use ITC or they don't submit to ITC. So there's no perfect system, but except PNW and them, they have a good system where they have a master circuit.
Yeah, for the Mid-Atlantic region, it was also a bit different. I guess same thing. We don't have masters.
Yeah.
That's something that's probably going to try to improve in the future. But I would say, just like the captain, just look at the players in the region who are performing well at events and just contacted us and was like, hey, do you want to play? And the answer was like, yeah, sure. And some people could not play, and then you just keep same thing going down the list.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, so lots of different opportunities. I know even in the future, Ridge, I know this year, as we said, it was kind of a little bit more chaotic and ad hoc, but even opening up applications. I know we've mentioned Six Nations as a European team championship. That obviously, Miles and the team took a lot of inspiration from. They I remember looking at England, they'll take applications for Team England that could be going to either of those events, right? That or AoS Worlds. So maybe that's something to look at. I know, maybe even for the US, that could be part of it, right? Obviously,
I'm sure that because you were not there doesn't mean that you would not be part of the team. I don't know exactly, but for sure the responsible of Team Canada that were at the event, they saw what was happening. They look at players. It's a great opportunity to see. There are very few team events in North America, and one with kind of all the good players at the same time is a good opportunity as well for like captains and coaches to look at and be like, oh, okay, like how is that person doing like under pressure? Like, do they bring the points that we want them to bring? I guess that's something maybe we can switch also a bit on the format, but like you're not necessarily trying to win. Like if you're supposed to bring back 8 points and you bring back 9, even if you lose the game, that's a win.
Mhm.
If you're supposed to bring back 16 and you bring back 12, it doesn't matter that you got a win. Actually, that's a loss for the team. You were supposed to bring 16. So like, are players able to do that? Like, are their estimates good? And are they like living up to it, or are they doing mistakes and like scoring less? Like, that's probably very important for captain, coach, for both team like USA and team Canada. I mean, I'm sure Ridge, you were also like looking at that.
Oh yeah, even more importantly was if you were actually, which we found out immediately looking at our matrix after, is like, did you actually code that match to what it should be? Like, was that actually a lime? Was that a green? Was that a yellow? Was that an orange? That's something that you find out after when you immediately, like even early in the tournament, there was a certain match where I had it as like a lime, where it was like, I don't, now that I've played that, I'm like, that was definitely an orange, maybe a yellow. Like, you sometimes, if you play it can be a certain player, a certain type of list, you can think that a matchup is what it actually is not, if that makes sense. So that's something we can obviously talk about a bit more, but
yeah, I guess that will like change a bit the focus on more like prepping for team event and be like, if you want to push it and be very good, you need to have good estimates. That's the most important, probably.
But before we get too deep in the weeds about matrices and pairings and all that stuff, which is definitely stuff we're going to cover, I guess like for those who might not have team events near them. Now, I know Fabian, you said there aren't a lot of there aren't many team events in North America, which is generally true. I know in Ontario, we probably have one of the biggest communities in like a local area in North America. I think in like Southern Ontario, where we have like events almost every weekend within an hour or an hour and a half drive. But we have like, TOs like Josh, our buddy, he runs a team event or two every year. Lionel runs a team event, and now there's smaller events in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, we have Jacob down in Nashville runs a great team event. So there are, but there's no
more and more.
Pardon me?
There are more and more.
Yeah, which is awesome to see. And part of what I wanted to do is kind of elaborate on what makes team events so great. And Fabian, you were talking about how it's not just about a win or a loss in teams where, with the matchup selection process, it's a lot more nuanced of like, okay, we know this isn't a good matchup for you, but we still need you to score this many points. And if you can achieve that for your situation, that is as good as we could have hoped for, and you did, or even you overachieved that. And I think just
without going too much in detail in terms of strategy and stuff like this, the great thing about teams, like if you're in singles and you run into a bad matchup and like that you're gonna lose and like you get a close loss but it's still a loss, like you're still sad because you lost, right? Like and it was a bad matchup, he was unlucky, and that's it. In teams, doesn't matter if it's a bad matchup, you can fight for the points, and like it's never pointless to play.
It's way more fun, like just in general. It's by far the most fun format to play, as everyone says. It's so true.
Yeah, and exactly that. I think just as competitive players, we can like, obviously we are always hoping to do well or do our best, and it can be like you get that first loss sometimes and it's just like, wow, it brings you down, right? But it's like when the shift or the focus shifts from just your own individual performance to like the team and scraping points for the team, and don't get me wrong, things are go right or wrong in those situations too, but it's not just solely about your performance, and if anyone's done team sports, obviously the camaraderie element of it is the best part of team sports, right? And working together towards a common shared goal and practicing and putting all the prep in together is, it means it's not all on your shoulders, and it's a lot more rewarding at the end as well, I think.
Yeah. And I think especially with events like this, where like we all take it like very seriously. There is like a lot of prep. I think like I'm a prep guy. Like I prep a lot even for singles. But,
no way, you Fabian? No.
but like even for like team events like that, like I mean I don't know for every team, but like in my team I kind of like I made everyone prep a lot, and like it like you get more value out of that, right? Like in the end you're like, okay, like we did a lot of effort, like it's not like you just show up and play your games. There is a more it's
for sure. Yeah, we did a ton of prep, and a lot of it was at the event as well, which was nice to see. Like we all before every matchup we went through everyone's pairings again. We went through every single person's, talked about every single person's list. We drove for 9 hours on the way there, so obviously we went through a bunch of the different lists and what they do. We knew kind of all that stuff, so all that stuff obviously helps. But you know, the biggest, most important thing is when you're there is either winning your games or playing to the ability that you want to play at. But the more preparation, clearly, yes, is gonna.
I think there are two things, and that's actually something that we can see probably in terms of the final result of the event. Is that, and I might be wrong, and please, people from Texas, correct me in the comments. But it looked like Pacific Northwest was more prepared than Texas.
I know that that was
from
like,
what they said themselves, that they were prepping at the last minute and doing like pairings for like during the Uber. Like it looks like they were more prepared. And for an event like this, it's like it's very important to be prepared. And in the end, it was a very close round. Spoiler alert: Pacific Northwest won the event, and that's because they did beat Texas by 2 points in their round. Even if in the other rounds they didn't win as big, so it ended up with less points. But for this event particularly, the final placing system was like wins first and then points,
which is notably different than Worlds.
For now. And Pacific Northwest was undefeated. They had their closest round against Texas. Again, they won by 2 points. But that was enough to be a win, and because of that, they won the event. So it shows like the two most important things for teams is, of course, like play well at the table.
Yes.
But also have good prep and good estimates, because almost all the time, I mean, there might be some exceptions, but like almost all the time, both teams feel that they won the pairings. Like if you ask,
super common.
You ask like the coach or the captain or like whatever, like how did the parents? Well, it went very well. And then at the end, one of the two teams is going to lose the round, and it's probably because one or more of the matchups were wrong estimates. Where like you thought that it was like a yellow and it was a big red, or you thought it was a lime and it was an orange, and like
or in our case, I feel like it was we did very, very well in our yellows and our oranges, and we got a lot of points, 7, 8, 9 points in our oranges and in some of our reds, which that's massive. So that's I think where we lost to Pacific Northwest. I think by what
4 points.
8? Was it 4? Or was it 8?
No, it's 84 to 76, so 8 points.
Yeah, so 8 points, which is very, very close as well. And I feel like that is anyone could have had that round. Absolutely, like then that was our loss.
that the difference to put that into context, an 84 to 76 win is literally that could have easily been decided in any single game. You could have a 4-point swing, right? And
so yes and no at the same time. For right now, the differential I was used for this event is actually quite a large differential compared to some other ones or previous edition. Yes, 4 points is not too much, but at the same time, it's still like 16 points in game. So like, it's quite a bit. Like to go from like 11-9 to a 12-8. Like every time you need 4 more points.
Sure.
So,
I guess maybe that's for.
Yeah, I mean, one big swing, like
exactly
prio that turns a game. Like it could be 4 points.
And I played Star Strike that round, and 2 of the objectives, one objective, the first one landed on one far side of the table, and the next 2 landed on the opposite side of the table. So like a swing like that easily in our game probably had at least a 13-point difference, if not more, probably really more.
Good plan for that.
Yeah,
that's what was like. Yeah, anything average there, we're up 20 to 8 after 2 turns.
We'll talk about. We're going to talk about that game a little bit because that was one of the more exciting ones for me. but there's I guess to talk maybe through the pairing process again. Actually, let's I wish I was a little more prepared with photos and stuff, because I did take photos of most of the things, but I've been writing.
Let me quickly answer one of the questions in the chat, because actually it's a point that needs to be improved, I think, for Masters, but as well as a different thing as Worlds. Like these teams events, one of the issues sometimes is just to find the results for people who are not at the event.
Mm-hmm.
Like Worlds last year was impossible to find. There is like nothing, except if you go on BCP, like there is nothing on the website. It's not up to date. Same issue with Masters, so I guess that's something that we should just keep in mind and remind the organizer for next year. But the question was like, how do you guys do? Ridge and Jordan and Team Canada minus BC finished third on the podium. First was Pacific Northwest, second was Texas, and my team finished fifth. So right in the middle, which is very fitting for Team Mid-Atlantic. And I guess I should say that it was actually very close, because if we score one more points against Canada, we are on the podium instead.
Yeah, because we tied.
We tied, and if that becomes a win, that puts us all the way to third. For you, it would not have changed anything, I think, even if you had a loss.
Well, it would have changed just who we both played in round 4,
so
which would have
for us, it would not have changed anything. It's also weird because there are 4 rounds and very few teams. We were 5th going into round 4, and we played against first.
Yeah,
because first had already played 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
So it was. Quite
we already played them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I actually did pull up the BCP webpage just to show off the standings while you were talking, so it was perfect. But if you do want to look at the results, that would be the way to do it. You can go round by round, look at the pairings and individual games. You can see round 3 here. This was when Team Canada from Azir played against Fabian's Mid-Atlantic Team Hish. You can just ignore the last game. You definitely don't need to look at that score between Fabian and I. But no.
Well, to be fair, it was also extremely close.
Oh yeah, that's again lots of exciting things or interesting things I want to talk about tonight with some of the different games. But I guess as a brief overview to the pairing process, and the way it works is obviously each team has their set of armies. And typically at Worlds, and how it was done here for the AoS Masters, is there's 8-player teams. There's 4 missions per round. So there are 2 matches playing on each mission, or 2 sets of matches playing on each mission. So the first mission, let's say it's Battle for the Past, just throwing a random one out there. Each team will put down like and flip over an army that they are using as a defender on that mission. Defender just generally means it's the first unit down, and they get choice of something like terrain, which terrain map to use.
Which is big.
Which is very big. But then the opposing team will put two attacker armies down for the opponent's defender, of which the opposing team gets to choose which of those 2 attackers they choose. So that's where someone like the defender is generally often kind of a role. If you hear that a lot, attacker defender's more of a role where I'm going to try and score points and be able to compete well in maybe a bigger range of matchups, or playing to specific missions, where your attackers are the ones that are the one that we're trying to get them into the right matchup so that they can get a big win and stuff like that. And you kind of go, there's a sequence where you go round by round for each mission, and then you end up with obviously your final 8 pairings across the 2 teams.
Yeah.
That
makes me want to do maybe a short video on just teams pairings.
That would be awesome.
Could be a good one, just to illustrate, like using TTS to have the visual of like putting the cards and like doing that. I'll try to do that. That should be pretty quick and easy, and it will probably help people understand a bit better. Again, we're saying like they are getting more and more popular, but there are still a lot of people who have never been to one, so that might help.
It's very interesting because it makes it way more of a game within the game. So before you're actually playing your game, it's even maybe more important to get your pairings right. So when you have a defender down that you're looking through your matrix to see, I want a defender that doesn't have very many weak matchups, so that when the opponent puts down his 2 cards, when you can see, so say for me it was Trogs, I didn't have that many bad matchups, but if I did, I would often be on a 3 objective map, which usually makes it not as bad for trolls. So when you can see that, I would take either look at both matchups, and a lot of the time what I found in this tournament at least was you would look at the 2 armies that are attacking and then look at your matrix and see how many greens and reds they had against other armies. So a lot of the time I actually was kind of busting myself because I knew that I was okay into both of them, but I knew that, say, Slaves to Darkness was a lot worse for the rest of my team. So I would play the Slaves to Darkness and then put back the Ogres or whatever it was, so that the rest of my team can play the other one. So there's a lot of like strategy around like kind of instances like that.
You look at the 2, and I mean there are different strategies, but like sometimes even if like one is a yellow and the other one is an orange, you might still take the orange because it removes it, and it's like it's also orange for anyone else in your team, and it kind of like blocks your pairing. So you're like, okay, I'm just jumping on the grenade, but like it's just gonna help the rest. Like,
and you can get 7 or 8 points.
And if you can do that on a favorable mission or as a defender choosing a terrain map, that's where you can.
Missions are so important. You can't do pairings just based on armies. Like using the missions is really
and
very important.
So I've actually did a good little stats deep dive that we're to be going over as a team, and kind of looking at some of the results and maybe some analytics to take away some information and learn from the pairings and whatnot for us. So I just have a couple of stats I'm going to give as little tidbits that I found very interesting. So as Ridge mentioned, we actually, in terms of like our green matchups, like you think, again, you have a scale of, let's say yellow is neutral, your green is a good matchup, or you might have a light lime green and then a dark green or something. But it's typically like there's 5 options, 3 is in the middle, and you're kind of on a grading scale of how many points you would expect to score against a certain opponent or whatnot. So through the pairing process, thinking of all the green matchups, we only had, I think, of 32 games that we played across the event. For all of our players, we only had 8 of those that we had marked as green, like lime green or dark green. So 8 of 32 isn't very much. And that's actually 25%. So only 1/4 of our armies went into green matchups. On the other hand, and this is probably where our, if we're looking at like why we felt we did well in hindsight, is when we looked at mission pairings, we had 81% green missions. And I think
if I have the same thing in my stats to compare. I think something also like to consider is like you need post analysis and maybe look at the team. Maybe some of the matchup you had were a bit pessimistic. Also, like some players would be like that, and they would be like, "Oh, that's an orange," but actually that should be a yellow, or they put it as a yellow. Like, no, that should be a light green. Like you should do that. But I think it's the same for us. We have about 10 lime or dark green. So again, same thing, like way less than half. And looking at the battle plans, I think we have 3 of them that were not green or dark green. So probably same as you, we really focused on having good battle plans for like all our players.
Yeah, and I really think for us, maybe we talked to them in afterwards when we played round 1 versus the Midwest team. We went into that event or that round. We were 7 neutral matches and 1 green one.
I mean, which is good, to be fair.
Oh no, for sure. But that's like, to illustrate, it's not like you're not getting a ton of opportunities because the opponent is obviously trying to deny you your green matchups, right? They don't want to let your Lumineth go into their weak thing and get an easy 20-0, right? They're trying to avoid that. And especially, I think this edition, it's a lot more nuanced, where there's a lot more stuff in the middle and not as many hard counters army to army. So
That's a good point. That's a good point to even say kind of what our thoughts were before the event going into, and I feel like a lot of people were on the same boat, is that this edition being new and fourth, like the best armies were just so strong that you didn't see a lot of the massive skew defenders that, you know, would sit on objectives and do well because they just die. Like with this edition, it's like a lot of the true defenders didn't really exist. It was some of these strong armies like Nighthaunt and Lumineth, like they just were so much better than the other ones that it wasn't like, say, the end of third. When we were prepping for Worlds, it was so much different. Like last year, it was so much different than like prepping for this, because like I said, I feel like there's no like true defenders. If you look at a lot of the armies, like, you know, trolls on low objective, yes, everyone had that. That's obviously good, but they still get tabled. Like it's hard to do. But I don't know. I feel like there's just something to be said about that with being a new edition. And if that makes sense.
Because I think for me, the biggest thing for the event is just that I think next year is going to be more competitive, obviously, but mostly because people will know the edition better and the estimates will be more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was first weekend of October, which is 3 months after the start of the edition?
Yeah.
Like from early July to early October. And there were some players in most teams that had not played that much. There are good players, great players, just like life gets in the way, and not everyone had played like 90 games like me.
And there's some that played 300. Fred.
Yeah. So but what that means that there were a lot, I think, of estimates that were just incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it was balanced by the player, who, even if it was a bad estimate, like too low or too high, like we find, but sometimes it wasn't. And I think that next year is going to be even closer. Although I would have to say, if you look at the results on BCP, you will see that most of the rounds were actually pretty close.
Yeah.
How many rounds scored more than 100?
Texas at some point, I think a couple
I think
times.
it was just one game.
One?
Yeah, just one time.
So there were 16 matches between teams, and only one of them scored over 100.
Yeah,
wow.
So like
it
was very close, and most of them were more like less than 90, I think.
Yeah.
For my team, our first 3 rounds were 78, 81, 80. Well, fourth round was a bit harder, but like it was very close.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I don't remember exactly what the breakdown was, but like, how many points the battle plan, or you store the differential in your game of battle points, is what determines what the or victory points.
Score.
Sorry, is what determines the differential score. So if you win
4 points.
Pardon me.
You mean like how do we get the 0 to 20 score? It's every 4 points.
Yeah, so that's one thing. I actually think it almost could have. I don't know if you can scale it, but it almost feels like it should have been, maybe for the first few things it's 3 points or something, so that to make it a bit, so there was a bit bigger gaps in the wins and stuff.
Yeah, that's a point of contention. Like people have talked about that.
Yeah, there are 2 things. For me, I know like the 2 points was too much. You get 20 way too quickly. That's what Tomo tried at the first event, like the Tacoma Open, if I remember correctly. And you had a lot of 20-0s very quickly, because basically that would mean that as long as you get a 20 points win, it's 20-0.
Yeah.
The event that we had here, to have a 20-0, you needed to have 37 points.
And there were only, 3 20-0s, I think, in the whole event?
So that might be a bit too extreme the other way around.
Yeah.
I think if we want to keep a linear one, I would prefer 3 points, which means that you will need, I don't remember, 27, I think, 28 points difference instead of 37, like something a bit more in between. Mm-hmm. So, or the other solution, I think, which would be even better, is to have a non-linear scale where when you're closer to a draw, it's like, for instance, like every 2 points, then it's every 3 points, and then it's every 4 points to get really like to a 20-0. So get a bit more granularity around the 11-9, 12-8.
Yeah.
And less, but like that's something to do. It's just a different format. It just depends on tournament.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you will see all of them. The idea is just like when you go to an event, just know what the scoring is. Don't be like Texas, not knowing that placings was wins first.
Yeah, it's fine. Tom's just gonna go around shooting roos and 20-0, so 19-1. It's fine.
Yeah. One thing that I would like to add about teams in general is that we said that teams is great. It's the best format. One thing that it has in like not an event like this. An event like this is perfect for teams or like Six Nation or Worlds because teams are somewhat balanced because you have like good players in every team, right? In more local tournaments, the issue might be that sometimes, like let's imagine it's like it's a big event, you have like 40 players. When it's singles, well, the top 5 players at some point are going to play against each other and you don't know who's going to win. Now, if you have the same 40 players and the 5 best players, because they all know each other, they are all in the same team, teams events are less balanced.
Yes.
Because you have all the good players together and they will crush the other
There's
teams.
a potential for it, yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's just because they will know each other and that's what happens. So like that's one of the downside of teams.
Yeah.
Like
local teams tournaments.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
agree. Yeah, I agree.
They're very fun. It's just that if you are not a team of all very good players, just know it's going to be hard because, again, like imagine you go against 5 top players, they're going to probably win all 5 games, even with bad pairings and stuff like this. So it amplifies the difference between levels.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. It's just expectations have to be a bit different than singles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know this is something that came up in different talks. Don't remember exactly regarding what, but it'd be interesting, like, again, brainstorming how solutions. And now it might be hard at a more casual kind of thrown together local event or something, but there's also the like it could be interesting to do team creation through a draft process or something. Now, when you consider like, okay, somebody's going to drop the day before, the day of, whatever, like that obviously throws a wrench into it. And there's different issues with that. But the idea that in Fabian's case, where the 5 best players are on the same team, well, if you have a community now, how do you choose this is another issue, but you make the 5 best players or whatever team captains, and then they all draft players in army, players with a specific army to form their team. In theory is really cool and really fun, but probably in practice hard to execute. Yeah,
I've seen some discussion about that on Twitter. Like that sounds like very fun. It's just it's hard to put together, make sure that like what would be the restrictions of like not having the same army twice in a comp and things like that.
And you want to play with your buddies is another thing, right?
Yeah.
I guess everyone, but
again, I mean that's things to discuss, and that can be some interesting formats. But for sure, like teams is fun. It's great.
Yep, that is true.
And I got to be Jordan.
And you got to be Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah. On that note, I wouldn't mind. I have a couple things that or moments throughout different games that I'd love to talk about. That being one of them. That was a great game, and I'd love to hear also after your insights on it, Fabian. But so this was round 3 that we played. Again, our teams played each other. Me and Fabian were paired into each other, I think, on
Border War.
Yeah, on Border War. So Fabian was playing Soul Blight. I was playing the OBR Nagash and Pony list. And it feels like we both had the same strategy in that match where we both were trying to keep it close and not taking risks looking for big wins or anything.
Exactly.
I know
I think like for me the battle plan was actually one of the rare orange we had as a battle plan. It was not good for me because Border War is not great, especially against OBR. I want more objectives.
You were playing Graveguard.
Yeah, wolves. 40 Graveguard. Just 1 unit of wolves.
Okay, yeah. Just for everybody.
Yeah,
watching.
it was a very close game. It came down to a few things, like a few priors that went my way, a few failed tactics, and also the pressure of time. But yeah, I mean, it was very close.
Yeah, I think in that, and see, my mindset in that game, based on like I was put, I think I was put down as defender, if I recall correctly. Maybe not for that one actually, but
Yes, I think you were.
Yeah, okay, and my mindset in that one was, okay, Fabian is one of their best players. I'm going to try to play very conservative and just minimize what scoring he's able to do, right? And you won the game, you scored more, but you only scored 7 points a turn, right?
Yeah, exactly. I scored 7 points every turn, I think.
Yeah. So the score was very depressed, which also meant that it was harder to pull a big differential. And that's kind of what I was going for. And now I made a damn bit to jump to an early lead that didn't pay off. But really in that one...
I got a 6-inch redeployed on one.
Dirt ball.
But like those kind of things, it's like I wasn't, and now Fabian, you said it during the game or after when we were talking, it's like there was like maybe an opportunity that I could have played more aggressive, especially with the recursion options that I have. Whereas I wasn't necessarily, looking for, a huge opportunity like to take again. I wasn't trying to take big risks and go for the win because my fear was that it would open up, if things go badly, a bigger differential the other way, right?
Which is funny is that, as you said, like sometimes considering the player, like even if I might be a good player, like with my playstyle, I never win big. So my goal is more like doing the same thing as you were, is like to limit my opponent's wins.
Yeah,
I keep it close, even if it's a bad matchup. I try to like get a few points over 10, but if it's under, it's also fine. Like I never win big.
You were the same as our Soulbot player Devin, which we looked at your scores after. You're one after the other in the placings. Like you're literally beside each other, and all pretty much 12-8s. Like it was the same thing.
And I played against Soulblight last round, and like it was like the closest game possible. It was an 11-9. Like
yeah.
But and that's a good example again of kind of where the game is right now. Is it's especially with the top armies and stuff. At times it's like most of these games were probably 11-9s, 12-8s throughout the tournament. Right, it was probably the most common score.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe up to like 13-7, 7-13.
Yeah, for sure. But those it was.
But again, that's also because the differential was like quite
tough.
Like if you compare to maybe other matrix, it might have been a lot more. It's just like 13-7 was up to 12 points difference.
Mm-hmm.
Like you win by 12, it's still a 13-7.
Yeah. Which is a big win in the current edition.
Against good players that will like make sure, like again, unless you get tabled by an early double play against Slaves or Luminate or Nighthaunt. But in a lot of games, you're gonna keep it close, and
I think
it's hard,
especially with the priority rule mechanics of losing your battle tactic right. It is even in those situations with those armies, it is just harder to pull big points advantages now. So that's where maybe a finer scoring system where it's easier to again, it's 3 points difference in victory points to get a point in differential your way kind of thing.
And another thing is as well the underdog mechanic. Like it's gonna help you come back in the game. It's not always great, but an extra CP is big. And then on some battle plan, it gives you even some more benefits. So like games tend to get closer unless it's a complete blowout, like it happens sometimes. Like if you play against Stormguan. Like round 4, he comes and walks next to me. I'm like, are you done already? And he shows me his scoring sheet. It was like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Oh, sorry, 9, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. So I guess he walked 49. And his opponent had like 1 or 2 lines of scoring. And after that, it was 0. I was like, okay. I think he tabled his opponents in 2 turns.
That's just Stormguan. It's so funny.
But guys, obviously talked about our game, Fabian. Any other game highlights? We're not going to go through every game or anything, but any highlights, either games or moments in games?
I can go very quickly over my 4 games.
Fabian, that's just what we just said we're not doing.
Okay,
No,
so
turn
turn
very
1.
quickly. It's like the fact that like I think like all my games went basically as expected. If you look at my estimates on plans and missions, it was usually a good combination of both, and they were all very close. I think like the game that I did not play well enough, I think, is my first game, and it's also like the mindset of teams. I came into it thinking that it would be a small loss. I had it as an orange, and the issue is that I played for a small loss, which I guess is good because I didn't get a bigger loss. But there might have been an opportunity by playing differently to try to go for a win. So again, it's not necessarily bad, because maybe trying to be more aggressive might have costed me a bigger win, but that's probably something that I should have discussed, I don't know, or in a more ideal scenario, like with a coach, or like, because I came in the game thinking it's going to be a small loss, so I went down in points to not expose myself to a big double and die. And after that, I maintained that differential through the game. And ended up 8-12.
Yeah, and that's exactly, like I was saying, the strategy that I had in our game, right? Where you thought there was opportunities for me to go for a win, but they were bitter risked, right? So
yeah, and it's like that's the interesting part. Like if it was singles, I would have played differently. In teams, I was happy with it. In the end, my team lost the round by 2 points. So it's like, oh, if I had actually won my game, we would have won the round. But it's hard to know from the beginning, right? And for me, the only way to change that would have been to change from the beginning, like from the deployment, how to play the game. That's not something that I could have changed during the game. It would have been like from the beginning. So yeah. So that's the thing that I wanted to bring. Is like, it's not really like one small play or anything like that. It's more like the entire strategy. And like sometime in teams you can play for a small win, which obviously you will never do in singles, like at a tournament. Like, why would you do that? But in teams, I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I dropped points early. Like, I didn't even pick a tactic turn 1 because it would have exposed me too much. So I just like did my little castle, didn't pick a tactic, and I was done with my turn in 3.5 minutes. And then I was like, okay, up to you. But yeah, that was my highlight, I guess.
I would agree. I think this is by far, if you look at the scores of my games, the lowest scoring, 4 games in a tournament or competitive setting that I've had this edition, just because it was just a different approach, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I can do super quick as well. So, so my first game, my tactic, I go for take the flanks. So we go into my hero phase. Jacob Berry's bit. It's always good. But no, my first game was against Night Haunt, which I was a little bit more comfortable, I thought, into Olinder, but that list just ended up being better than I thought. But I was able to squeak a win because it was 3 objectives, shifting objectives, so just so strong. I just obviously camped on 2. Second game, got to play Matthias, my boy.
For context, you were playing 18 trolls and gits. Yes,
so I'm playing 18 trolls and 20 squigs and a couple of units just to score with Scragrot to hold the moon in place. So yeah, super strong. But then my game 2, I had when playing Matthias, I've played slaves a ton, but I haven't really lost big like that. But turns out Ren 3 Vanguard pretty good with anti-infantry. But no, yeah, I tried to keep it close, and I did scrape more points than I should have. So I can't remember if I lost 14-6 or what it was, but that one was one of those ones where I quickly identified that I'm probably going to get table, like I'm going to lose, but I need to get as many points as I can, which I did end up getting a decent amount. And then my third and fourth game were both I pretty much, in the pairings, like I was saying, I not fully bust myself, but I gave myself a worse matchup because I needed to get rid of an army so that our Lumineth, like so Sabeti, our Lumineth could get a green. So in both those instances, it was the same army, and it was OBR because they have that -1 to wound bubble in shooting. So we couldn't have our Lumineth player going into that because it just so greatly diminishes how elves shooting. So I had to play the OBR, which those aren't great matchups for me. Catacross minusing your attacks by 1 is incredible against the Trogs. -1 to hit and -1 to save spell. The Bone-Tied Shrieker reduces your ward by 1. So that was a very good like troll kind of killing army. Roush was playing it. Walter Brock, who ended up beating me in game 4, which was played it very well. Was one of those lists, like I said, that I pretty much just had to play because of that, our Lumineth player did get a good size green, a good win. So that's kind of, it worked out. Like that's essentially what I want to do. And me being a defender, I'm able to be put in those positions because I know I can choose which matchup I want, and then we can look and see how it benefits us later.
And make sure you're on a mission that is to your advantage.
That I can advantage or equal, which was Jaws was the last one, which Walter played perfectly, and did what you do, which is just give away the turn and scored less, and then burned objectives until. And I even played aggressive and tried to take it. We finished 40-38, so it was only a 2-point win. So I got 9 points out of that, which I consider to be orange to yellow. If he gets all those things off, like the Shrieker. And the -1 to hit and save spell, 4 more gas, Archai, and Catacross. It was, So, that was pretty much the quick kind of recap of it. But it's like, I know you don't like going into those games because you're like, oh, I know already off the bat this can go very badly for me. So in my third game, I knew that, and I played to one of my outs. I just played my 20 squig herd super aggressive. I rolled a big 10-inch charge, and I got the 20 squig herd with the mortals into his Immortus guard, which were bodyguarding for Catacross. And then I kind of just took the middle because it was on Vice. So I just knew, I'm like, I'm down. If I can't get into the middle, Catacross is going to be alive forever. So I just got to go for this. It's my one play. And I made a big charge with on the reroll. And eventually I was able to grind him down. And then turn 4 and 5, I scored max. So I actually won the other game into OBR, which was pretty big for that round. But yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
OBR is pretty good.
Yes, -1 attack. Pretty good in the game right now.
Yeah.
Being all over the damn place. Bodyguard is just so strong.
For sure. I think the one game I'd love to highlight was my round 2 game. This was when we were playing Pacific Northwest, and just to talk about where, again, there's more considerations than just matchup and even just mission. So I was a defender, and we ended up choosing for me to play into Stormcast, which has shooting. That's a priority target shooting unit, which obviously before the battle scroll was extremely strong, especially when you have a single regiment and everything in your regiment is obviously in the general's regiment and gonna get ripped apart. So this was a like red matchup or whatever, like a bad matchup on a mission I didn't love, but the big caveat to that is we had a strategy for how to play it. An interesting option that would limit a big score for our opponent, if nothing else. That was kind of the plan going into it, was to jump out to a scoring lead and try and hold on. But the big thing is, as the defender, I also got to choose the terrain map, and I got to pick the terrain map that actually had, one of the ones that had 4 wildwoods on it, which against shooting helps, obviously, right? So against Jeremy and his Stormcast, the mission was Star Strike. As I said earlier, we were hoping the first objective would come down somewhere central, and I could just throw everything on it for 2 rounds, score 20 points and be up like 20-8, not allowing my opponent to score it at all. The first one, unfortunately, came down on the other flank, which wasn't the worst because it was still able to pivot, deny it for 2 turns. And
what'd you roll? 11 or 12 or something?
11. Yeah, 11 and 12 are the very end. Which is, again, that was fine, but the strategy depended on having a second objective come down somewhere close to it so that I could kind of castle around those 2. Unfortunately, I took turn 3 prio because I knew I needed to store big, and I'm glad I did, because the other 2 objectives came down on the far side of the table, which is like the worst case scenario. Basically, this felt like a game where we had a great strategy, great plan, great deployment, but everything that could go wrong did go wrong, in a sense. But after my turn, so top of 3, I was up 30-4 though, because I was also able to deny a tactic with a big redeploy on turn 1. So a great position to be in, but the cascading effect of those objectives coming down on the other side meant I was, after that first, opportunity on top of 3, I never scored more than one objective for the rest of the game. And through some, great playing by Jeremy, taking every risk he could, and, looking for and getting some big charges, nearly forced a 30-30 tie after I was up, 30-4, which is just hard to explain just through that, but that gives an illustration of how wild and swingy this game was.
It was very funny because I was beside you and you look over at me and you're like, I'm never fucking listening to you guys again.
Yeah, because you and Devin had
it was Devin's like kind of the one that spearheaded the plan for
the idea.
It was so funny, and we were all on the same page of like, yes, this is a very smart thing to do on Star Strike.
But even that, to your point earlier, is in hindsight, I'm kind of glad that first one came on the far flank, but it helped me avoid some of the firepower, because there's just too much damage out there, and I could not have survived 2 full rounds of long strike shooting, Krondus in combat, unit of Paladors. Like when on turn 3, after I finally kind of exposed myself out of the woods and gave him opportunities, he ripped through my army very quickly, right? And that's where
you're also, it should be noted, and most people that watch the channel know this, but you're very, very much a reactive player where you like to give away first and kind of not put yourself in a position like you did in that game.
Yeah.
So I think it took you out of your comfort zone, which is, even before the game, you deployed like that, and you looked at me saying before the game, you're like, I don't want to do this. I want to give away the turn and just play it. Like, man, stick to the play. Just go.
Yeah. And not even that. It's just exactly that. It was out of my comfort zone, right? Of taking big risks, because I think that panned out all right. Part of the reason, so again, Jeremy nearly forced a 30-30 tie, but when Krondus, when Nagash had 1 wound left and Krondus did 2 mortal wounds and power through, I rolled 2 ward saves, 2 6s on the wards to keep,
and yelled very loudly.
Yeah, the one time the one time I got really animated that tournament, because that was the difference between it being a 10-10 tie and a 12-8 win, which it ended up being.
How do you power through on Nagash with Krondus?
Is he not 20 wounds? Nagash is 18.
Oh, Nagash is only 18?
Yeah.
Oh, baby.
Yeah. So that's how. But
I thought he was like 25. Like, okay.
No, unfortunately. But yeah, so that's like, and that's even, again, talking about the mission element, a swingy mission like Star Strike. If that one of those other objectives comes down, more like in the middle or on my side where I was, it is probably, like a 50-20 game or something, or 44-20 game. Like,
yes.
Just
that's what the plan was for. Like if math worked, but
yeah.
And there's one thing that, again, we might also not have insisted enough on, but like, because it was the Masters, every player there was a great player.
Yeah.
And like every game felt like game 5 of a GT. You go to the table, that your opponent is going to play great. Like, it's not going to be easy. You have to be on the top of your game and cannot do any mistake. And if you do one, you're going to be punished hard. So like, that's something that's very different compared to other events, right? Like, usually you have that at like 1-2 games, like on day 2, maybe 3 if you're a bit unlucky. A bit more when you do big events like Nova or LVO, and you have to keep playing like in the top 8 or things like that. But like, this event, it's every single game, and I don't know about you guys, but for me, they were a lot more exhausting than normal GT. We played 2 games a day, and I was exhausted.
Oh yeah, there's no way I would play 3. Like that's, oh my god, and that's why with Worlds as well, it's 2-2-2, which is perfect.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, I think agreed. That's, you have more time then too. That's definitely the way to do it. I like that for like super high competitive events.
Yeah, if they want to do more games, that's fine. Just add one more day.
Yeah, the same
Like,
as Worlds.
Don't do 3 days on one day. That's too much for an event like this.
No.
Please think about us.
Yeah.
Hard
we
agree.
we want to drink.
And we did.
Yeah, either in
Pumpkin
victory
beers were
or
flowing.
misery.
Yeah.
I mean, I drank a lot on Friday night. I did not drink almost at all on Saturday night.
You weren't feeling great Saturday morning.
Oh yeah, no, Saturday morning. Like everyone saw me coming in the room and like with my glass of water, and everyone was like, "Ooh."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess so. That's obviously a lot of the point, high and low points of the tournament. Mostly high points or exciting points, but I think just to echo what Fabian said, I think some of the best games of AOS I had. That to me is probably the most fun tournament I can recall. Also, because a lot of the like more competitive players or the top end competitive players do travel. We've run into a lot at other events, so we all went into this event. There's 8 teams of 8 players, 64 players, and I went in feeling like I knew 2/3 of the players there already, right? So it was a great atmosphere in that regard.
Yeah, and I guess that goes echo to something I say a lot, because I hear it a lot, and you have people who will say that these events are like a boys' club, like it's only friends. It's the other way around. It's top players. You go a lot to events. You become good, and the big part is you go to a lot of events. You're gonna get to know these players who also travel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not everyone know each other from like 5 years ago. There are a lot of like newer players. It's just that they go to a lot of events, they go to the top table, they end up playing with the other top players, and like that's how you get there. Like, don't think that, oh, like I will never be able to go there because I don't know these guys. No, like if you put the effort, do a lot of prep, have great results in tournaments, you can go there. You can get there. It's not closed.
Man,
it's not a closed community. It's super open. Just like you have to deserve it. It's like it's not easy. Everyone there plays a lot, preps a lot.
Yeah.
It's also like it's not just like raw talent. I mean, you might have a few, but most people just prep and
practice lots
and think about the game and like think about things in their head or like put it on paper. Like it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But again, it's not closed. It's not a boys' club. You can get there if you put the effort.
And often it doesn't take as long as you think. I know a lot of very, very good players that have only been playing for a year and a half, 2 years. Like, yes, some people will get better quicker than that.
My first tournament was 2 years ago.
Yeah. Silva Nothing Nova, right?
Yeah. Like, and I didn't know anyone at this point. Like, I had never been to any event. Like, that's where we met for the first time, but like...
Yeah.
Look at you now.
And look at you now, Fabian. Yeah, it was. It must be said that absolutely the best is just seeing everybody too, like seeing all the people that you don't get to see all the time, and in the most competitive way. And the teams format is just so fun, just chirping each other and talking about it like you're playing each other. It doesn't matter. It's just it's so great. So,
yep. All right, guys. Well, any closing thoughts or remarks?
No, I mean, I guess thanks to the TOs for running the event. Thanks for the people who put also a lot of work like before the event. Yeah, it was like very smooth, very well ran. It was great.
Thanks to Rob too. The coverage was awesome. I watched some of it just back, and it's just
I'm excited too. I haven't yet.
It's funny, man. Yeah, it got some good chats in with him, and yeah, just awesome seeing him. And obviously Miles and Corey and everyone that ran the event was done really well as well. But yeah, it was great. Boston rules.
Yes, sir. It was a lot of fun. Not the best or not the most enjoyable drive, but we made do.
I hope that it's a bit more central next year. Like, was fine for me, but thinking about our friends from like the southwest or the northwest, like
sounds like this
central location might be a bit better.
It's going to be moving around to different areas.
Let's do the Midwest. Midwest would be okay, or maybe actually Texas and California. I eventually want to fly. I haven't been there, but
we'll see what they have in mind. But like, I think in the middle, you could have either Texas if it's in the south, or like Chicago in the north. I think
Chicago
more
would be
central
cool, yeah.
location, but we'll have to see.
Yep.
That's a
Yeah.
surprise. And we still need to make the team, so have to keep at the top of our game.
Yeah.
There is another small team event coming sometime next year in May, I think. Like it's called Worlds, where you guys.
Yeah. Heard about that one.
Yeah, I need to practice for that. I think.
I think I might get married instead. I don't know. We'll see. Too soon? Too soon, Fabian?
Yeah, too soon. For those words, it's a private joke because I can't go, but I will be helping Team Canada. I will do my best to help the team.
We appreciate it.
But yeah, too soon, Rich.
Yeah.
Too soon.
But yeah, with that, guys, we'll wrap things up here. Thanks so much for joining tonight. Hopefully, it gave you some good insight into team events and obviously AoS Masters specifically. Looking forward to having more team events around. I think we have a couple that TOs that run them periodically throughout the year, so that's always super exciting. So yeah, look out in your community, try and find some team events, and if you don't see any, host them.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. But otherwise, that's going to be it for us here tonight. Have a good evening, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye.
See you, everybody.